Oh man, who knew? It's July 2022, and we're still talking about Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, both of these guys are kind of in different situations now. They are no longer linked at the hip like they were when everybody was talking about their goaltending controversy, the Vezina, the playoff starts, etc., etc. But let's go over a little hit on, what was this? The radio? I'm not really too sure. Okay, this was on the Cam and Strick Podcast, that's what it was. And we had a little interview done with Kelly McCrimmon, the Vegas Golden Knights GM, talking about a few Vegas things. Now, the one part I wanted to focus on with this interview was what he had to say about the goaltending situation, and how some of these comments make a lot of the things we had heard in the past a little bit more difficult to fully absorb. So, Robin Lehner is the current Vegas Golden Knights goaltender. He's 30 years old, and he's making $5 million a year till the end of 2025. He's got a modified no-trade clause, and he has been the starter of this team for a while. Earlier on, you had yourselves Marc-Andre Fleury, who was also the starter of this team. In fact, he was the first guy to suit up for the Vegas Golden Knights. He's 37 years old, he is expiring, he no longer has a contract, but he recently played for the Minnesota Wild, where he suited up in 11 games in the regular season for that team, as well as 5 games in the playoffs. We have already talked at length about how Marc-Andre Fleury was a beast for Vegas, how even though in the 2020 bubble he was technically the backup because Robin Lehner was given all the starts in the playoffs, you still had yourselves a guy that went out in the next season and posted up a Vezina caliber year. He had a .928 save percentage and a .198 goals against average, and he was the best goaltender in the entire NHL. Not surprising with those numbers. Now, unfortunately, he got traded immediately after that season. He was traded for a guy that the Golden Knights ended up buying out, I believe, or they placed him on waivers with the intention of terminating his contract, something like that. And essentially, the Golden Knights got rid of Lehner for nothing. And the guy didn't find out he was traded until he saw it on Twitter. So there you go, Vegas going out there and treating their players nicely like they always have been. But Fleury is a little bit of an older guy. He had himself a very good season to end off his Vegas tenure, and now he is just kind of in the market hoping to find his next hockey home. There was always some sort of controversy going on with Lehner and Fleury when they were both on the team, especially when you had Peter DeBoer going out there, the former coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, saying things very publicly in the media that kind of called out one or the other goaltender. For Robin Lehner, this was a pretty particular problem, as you had some games down the stretch where Lehner just didn't really have a good start, or he let in a bad goal or two, and Peter DeBoer would call him out in the media, saying things like, yeah, okay, we needed a save there. You need to know that your goaltender can make saves when he needs to make saves. And there was a game where he pulled out Robin Lehner after the first period because he felt the team just wasn't too comfortable in front of him. And so there was always a little bit of a strange aura with Robin Lehner and the way Peter DeBoer was treating him, especially this season after Fleury left. DeBoer says that Lehner is not as good as he could be, or he's not playing as well as he could be, but then he gets the start in the next few games, and you have Logan Thompson sitting on the sidelines, who is also very good this season for the Golden Knights, and there was another goaltender controversy started up because of that, and Lehner was injured here and there. It was definitely not a fun situation to watch from the outside, because you know that Lehner was supposed to be the guy that the Golden Knights placed all of their trust in ever since they traded Fleury away. So seeing DeBoer treat Lehner the way he did was discomforting, to say the least. Nevertheless, we had ourselves this interview done by McCrimmon on the Cam and Strick Podcast, where he goes over the entire dynamic with the goaltending with Lehner, Fleury, and DeBoer. We're going over onto the Golden Knights subreddit and reading what it is that Unhealthy Cheesecake had to say. This is the audio transcript of what McCrimmon said on the show. This is what the GM has to say. Well, last year you mentioned Marc-Andre Fleury and Lehner shared the net in the 56-game season. I give both guys credit. I thought the relationship was good. I thought they were happy for the other guy when he played well. You know, this year, Lehner had a lot of trouble with injuries in the second half of the year. Our team was shorthanded, he was trying to play, he wasn't able to play at the top of his game. We were having a little bit of trouble getting wins. We even got to April where we still had a chance, and we were dressing a little bit of a better lineup. I don't think anybody in our lineup was necessarily at the top of their game, but at least our lineup card looked a little bit better, and we were scratching and clawing for wins. That's what happened, and Lehner had to get surgery on his shoulder, and he also had a pretty serious injury in his leg. Past that, Peter DeBoer has always been a big Robin Lehner fan. He wanted him as our goalie. He wanted us to extend him. He played him as the starter in the bubble when we were in the conference finals against Dallas, although last year when we went to the conference finals, it was Fleury who was our starter. Flower had a great year, won the Vezina, and yet Lehner was the guy that Pete always felt the most comfortable with. Now, this is strange. And the reason it's strange is because, firstly, it kind of goes against all of the stuff that Peter DeBoer said in the media publicly. Hey, we're going to pull Robin Lehner after the first period in this game because we just don't think the team is comfortable playing in front of him. The numerous times that DeBoer went into the media and called out Robin Lehner for not being as good as he could be. I guess these McCrimmon comments explain why Lehner was still given starts continuously, even though DeBoer verbally expressed his frustration with the goaltender in the media, but it also kind of collides with everything that we had seen with Fleury. Here's another comment on the same post by the Slippery Flamingo. Man, I love the Golden Knights fans. Their comments are always coming from some pretty good usernames. Here are just my thoughts on the situation. Could this be GM Kelly McCrimmon throwing Peter DeBoer under the bus for how Fleury was handled and trying to tilt some sort of the blame on him? Why did Peter DeBoer so openly call out Lehner and essentially create a riff that was the final straw towards him losing the room? If this is true, and now that Peter DeBoer is gone, is Lehner leaving, and so is it obviously going to be back to the New York Islanders? Here's a personal opinion followed by a question. I'm 100% comfortable with Logan Thompson as the backup if we need cap space. Brassard is an obvious move, but do we move Lehner? If we do, who would you guys want to see in net? Now, there are indeed some other things to go over with the first part of this sort of questionnaire over here. The way Fleury was handled was not really all too great. The guy got a Vezina caliber season and then he was traded for nothing. Or I guess he was traded for a player, but that player didn't become anything because they terminated his contract right away. So he was traded for nothing pretty much, Marc-Andre Fleury was. And there was a lot of controversy going on at the time from firstly, Alan Walsh, Fleury's agent, because there were reports going around there that Walsh was telling other teams, hey, don't trade for Fleury because if you do, he's just going to retire, he's just not going to play, so don't go ahead and try to make a trade for him. But alas, he went over to Chicago and actually played out that year. Now, it wasn't all too certain that he would actually start. There was a little bit of a gray zone after Fleury was acquired by Chicago where we had to ask ourselves, okay, is Fleury actually going to play? Because, I mean, he's got a family, he's already 36 years old, his family loved Vegas, and he was accepted in that community. He's got kids, etc., so is he going to be willing to just up and away take everybody out of Vegas and go to Chicago? Now, he did that, but the way the Golden Knights were treating Fleury back in that situation was seen as a very big no-no, especially with the fact that they didn't actually tell him that he was going to get traded. He found out via Twitter. So, for this entire idea here, McCrimmon going out there maybe saying, oh, it's Peter DeBoer's fault. Peter DeBoer was the reason we did all this stuff because he loved Lehner and he wanted to keep Lehner on board and we had to make a choice between Lehner and Fleury and we went with what the coach wanted us to do. Also, the other questions are there as well. This is what Unhealthy Cheesecake replied. I don't really see McCrimmon's comments as throwing Peter DeBoer under the bus. Fleury wasn't good in 2019-20 and Lehner was the better goalie in the bubble. Pete played the better goalie. If Peter DeBoer believed Lehner gave the team the best chance to win, then they played Lehner. If Fleury didn't like his way out, he shouldn't have let the sword tweet fiasco happen or bobble the puck and change the entire momentum of the series against Montreal. Oh man, memories. Don't you remember that? The Fleury bobble against Montreal? Oh boy. Was that the final straw that kind of caused him to get traded after a Vezina caliber year? I'm not really too sure. You can let me know in the comments all your thoughts about that. But either way, the Vegas Golden Knights no longer have Peter DeBoer in their system now. It's a brand new Bruce Cassidy, or not brand new I guess, but you get what I mean. He's taking over the reins here and he will likely deal with the goaltending in a way that's a lot more civil than what we saw with Lehner, Fleury, and DeBoer because that entire fiasco was certainly not the easiest thing to digest. But either way, talk to the comments all your thoughts about the Golden Knights and their goaltending situation. What do you think is going to happen next season? Also, what do you think McCrimmon's comments on the Cam and Strick podcast indicate about what we had already known when it came to those former players in previous years? Does this change your opinion on how Fleury was treated, on how Lehner was treated, on how DeBoer did his business? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. By the way, we are going to be streaming for the draft. It's starting at 3 p.m. PST, maybe a little bit earlier if I'm actually feeling it, but the program is going to go on for a few hours at the very least, as long as the draft first round goes pretty much. So join us for that. It's coming up later tonight, but also talk in the comments all your thoughts about this Lehner Vegas stuff. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.